Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm 32 years old, a freelance graphic designer from Seattle, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my husband's affair through our shared laptop. You know how they say, curiosity killed the cat? Well, in my case, curiosity killed my marriage, but it also saved my sanity. I've been married to David for 7 years. We met in college, built what I thought was a solid relationship, and shared everything, including our MacBook Pro. David works in tech sales. I work from home designing websites. We trusted each other completely. That was my first mistake. It was a Tuesday in March when David left for a business trip to Portland. I needed our laptop for a big project, but it was running slowly with too many applications open. Being organized, I decided to close everything unnecessary before starting work. That's when I saw it. A notification popped up from someone named Elena in a messaging app I didn't recognize. The preview text made my stomach drop. Can't wait for tonight when David had never mentioned anyone named Elena. We shared everything: friends, work contacts, social circles. Who was Elena and why was she sending messages about tonight when he was supposed to be in Portland? My hands shaking, I clicked the notification. The messaging app opened, revealing a conversation that made my world tilt. This wasn't work. This was my husband having an intimate conversation with another woman, and it had been going on for months. The conversations went back to December. 3 months of secret messages. I watched their relationship develop through text, like reading a novel where I was the villain. December 15th. Thanks for the great presentation today. December 22nd. That wasn't just a work coffee, was it? I had a really good time. I remembered December 22nd vividly. David came home that evening claiming he'd had a boring coffee meeting with a client about year-end strategies. He'd even complained about how tedious it was, how the client kept going on about budget allocations. He'd kissed me when he walked through the door and asked what I wanted for dinner, suggesting we order Thai food and watch a movie. We'd spent the evening cuddled on the couch, and he'd seemed so present, so loving. The whole time, he'd been thinking about Alina. By January, they were texting good morning and good night. David would send him photos of his coffee. She'd send him pictures of her lunch. They developed inside jokes, shared memes, created their own little world that I knew nothing about. I realized that while I'd been going through my normal routine, working, cooking dinner, planning our weekends, David had been living an entirely separate emotional life. By February, they were sharing intimate details about their feelings, their dreams, their disappointments. Elena was recently divorced and vulnerable, and David was apparently unhappy in his marriage and confused about what he wanted. He'd written long messages about feeling trapped, about wondering if he'd married too young, about feeling like he'd lost himself somewhere along the way. Amanda's a good person, he'd written on February 8th. But we've grown apart. She doesn't understand me the way you do. When I talk to her about my dreams, my fears, my ambitions, she just nods and changes the subject. But you really listen. You see me. Reading that message felt like being stabbed in the chest. When had I stopped listening? When had I become someone who just nodded and changed the subject? I thought back to our recent conversations, trying to remember if that was true. Had I been dismissive of his feelings without realizing it? But then I remembered the conversation we'd had just 2 weeks ago when David had mentioned feeling stressed about a big presentation at work. I'd spent an hour listening to him practice, offering suggestions, making him tea, reassuring him that he'd do great. He'd thanked me afterward, said I always knew how to make him feel better. Had that all been fake? The recent messages destroyed me even more. While I'd been planning our anniversary dinner, David had been with Elena last weekend, lying about playing golf with his friend Mark. I'd helped him pack for his supposed golf trip, had even made him sandwiches for the road. I kissed him goodbye and told him to have fun, to relax, that he'd been working too hard lately. Instead, he'd spent Saturday and Sunday at Elena's apartment. I found messages about their weekend together. Breakfast in bed, walking through Pike Place Market, sharing intimate conversations about their future. The most recent messages were from this morning. Elena, I'm so excited for tonight. It feels like forever since we've had real time together. David, I know, having to sneak around is exhausting, but it'll be worth it. Elena, are you sure she won't suspect anything? David, don't worry about Amanda. My wife will never know. I told her I'm in Portland for work and she trusts me completely. She's probably working on some design project right now, completely oblivious. We have all night. I stared at those words until they burned into my mind. My wife will never know. She trusts me completely. Completely oblivious. He was right about one thing. I had been oblivious. But he was wrong about the other part. His wife did know now. The worst part wasn't even the affair itself. It was how he talked about me to Elena. Like I was some naive fool who could be easily deceived. Like my trust was a weakness he could exploit rather than a gift I'd given him. She trusts me completely. He'd said it like it was funny. Like my faith in him was something to laugh about with his mistress. 7 years of marriage, and this is how he saw me? As the gullible wife who would never figure it out? I felt sick, overwhelmed by the scope of his deception. All those late nights at work, he'd been with Elena. The weekend golf trips, Elena. The business dinners, Elena. The conference in San Francisco last month, Elena had been there too. But what really broke me was reading how happy he was with Elena. In his messages to her, David was excited, passionate, alive in a way he hadn't been with me in months. You make me feel like myself again, he'd written to Elena, like the person I was before I got married. Before me, like marrying me had somehow diminished him, trapped him. But then something shifted inside me. The shock transformed into cold, calculating anger. David thought his wife would never know. He was wrong. I started taking screenshots of everything, creating a folder called Evidence. If this was ending, and it was, I wanted proof. David wasn't in Portland at all. He was 20 minutes away, planning to spend the night at Elena's while I remained completely oblivious at home. I looked at the time, 2 p.m. According to their messages, they wouldn't meet until 6 p.m. That gave me 4 hours to decide how to handle this. I could confront him directly, but that would give him time for excuses. David was a salesman, good with words, good at making people believe what he wanted them to believe. Or I could do something else, something that would make it impossible for him to lie his way out. I started typing in their chat. Hi, Elena. This is Amanda, David's wife. I think we need to talk. I hit send before I could change my mind. 3 dots appeared immediately. Elena was typing. Oh my God, Amanda? How are you? David said you didn't know about his messages. How did you find out? We share a laptop. I saw everything. What exactly did David tell you about me and our marriage? Elena's response shocked me. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen this way. David told me you two were having problems, that you were basically living separate lives. He said you were more like roommates than spouses and that you both knew the marriage was over but hadn't made it official yet. I felt like I'd been slapped. Roommates? Our marriage was over? This was complete news to me. Just last week, David and I had been planning our anniversary dinner. We'd been looking at houses to buy in different neighborhoods, debating whether we wanted a yard for the kids we'd talked about having. He told you we were getting divorced? I typed, my fingers shaking. Not divorced exactly, but separated. He said you were both seeing other people but still living together for financial reasons. He said you had your own boyfriend but were keeping it quiet from your families until you figured out the logistics of splitting up. My own boyfriend? David had created an entire fictional version of our marriage to justify his affair. According to his story to Alina, I was already cheating too, so his relationship with her wasn't really betrayal. It was just two people moving on from a marriage that was already over. It was brilliant in a sick way. By telling Elena that I was also seeing someone else, David had eliminated any guilt she might feel about being involved with a married man. He'd made himself seem honest and ethical, someone who was being upfront about a complicated situation rather than a cheater destroying his marriage. Elena, I need you to know that none of that is true. We're not separated. I don't have a boyfriend. Until 2 hours ago, I thought we had a happy marriage. He's been lying to both of us. There was a long pause before her next message. I could imagine Elena sitting at her computer, processing this information, realizing the full scope of David's deception. Oh God. Oh God, I'm so sorry. He told me, he said you knew about me, that you were okay with it because you had moved on too. I would never have. I'm not the kind of person who breaks up marriages. If I had known you thought you were in a happy marriage, I never would have gotten involved with him. I could almost feel Elena's panic through the screen. She wasn't the villain I'd expected her to be. She wasn't some homewrecker who didn't care about destroying families. She was another victim of David's lies, another woman he'd manipulated to get what he wanted. How long have you believed we were separated? I asked, needing to understand the full timeline of David's deception. Since January. He told me right before things became physical between us. He said he wanted to be honest about his situation before we took things further. I thought he was being so mature and ethical about it. Mature and ethical. David had convinced Elena that his affair was actually a sign of his good character. He'd made her believe she was helping him through a difficult transition rather than participating in the destruction of his marriage. Elena, when David talks about his future, does he include you in it? Has he made you any promises about what happens next? He said that once you both figured out the logistics of the divorce, we could be together openly. He talked about introducing me to his family, about us moving in together. He even mentioned wanting to travel with me, to take me to places he's always wanted to visit. Places he's always wanted to visit. Places we had planned to visit together. I thought about the Italy trip we'd been saving for, the photos we'd bookmarked of Tuscany vineyards and Roman architecture. Had David been planning to take Elena there instead? Had all our shared dreams become promises he was making to someone else? Elena? Are you in love with him? I thought I was. These past few months, I felt like I was falling in love with someone who really understood me, who saw me as I am. But now I don't know what to think. If he lied about something this fundamental, this big, what else has he lied about? How can I trust anything he's told me about himself, about his feelings, about us? We spent an hour planning. Elena would confirm their plans for tonight without mentioning our conversation. At 6:15, after David arrived, I would knock on her door. David thought his wife would never know. He was about to discover how wrong he was. At 6:10 p.m., I stood outside Elena's building, heart pounding but resolve steady. I'd changed into the red dress David always said was his favorites. If this was going to be our last confrontation as husband and wife, I wanted to look like the woman he was throwing away. I knocked on apartment 4B. "David, could you get that?" Elena called. "I think it's my neighbor." The door opened. David's face went through confusion, recognition, shock, fear, and desperate calculation in rapid succession. "Amanda, what? What are you doing here?" "Hi, honey. Surprise. Your business trip to Portland seems to have taken an interesting detour." Elena appeared behind David. Blonde, petite, younger than me, but looking as uncomfortable as David. What struck me most was the genuine remorse in her eyes. "Can I come in? The three of us need to have a conversation." Elena stepped forward. "Please, come in." "David, let her in." David remained frozen in the doorway, mouth opening and closing like he was trying to speak but couldn't find words. I'd never seen him speechless before. David always had words. It was his job, his talent, his weapon of choice. But standing there, caught between his wife and his mistress, he had nothing. The apartment was intimate, modern, exactly as I'd imagined from our text conversations. I could see evidence of David everywhere. His jacket draped over a chair, his watch on the coffee table, an open bottle of wine that I recognized as the expensive brand he only bought for special occasions. He'd made himself completely at home here, while I'd been completely unaware at our actual home. "Sit down, David. We have some things to discuss." "Amanda, I can explain everything." "Actually, I don't want your explanations right now. I want your answers to specific questions, and I want Elena to hear them too, because it turns out you've been lying to both of us." Elena sat down across from us, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked nervous but determined. David remained standing, shifting his weight like he was looking for an escape route. "First question," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "Elena, David told you we were separated and basically living like roommates? David, is that true?" "Amanda, it's complicated."
It's a yes or no question. Are we separated? No.
If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.